Jan, I'm sorry about that. Johann. Johann Most is the anarchist with the most. He's a German radical that come to America about the same time frame that my ancestors come to America. Died in 1906 or so, 1905. He had published Freedom, a newspaper called Freedom. So again, another German newspaper. Lots of German newspapers all over the place. They were making the most of the printing press, right? Putting publications out there for everybody, pictures, words, columns. So Johann Most, he established it in 1879. It's known for advocacy, propaganda of the deed, some sort of revolutionary violence that could inspire people to revolution. So that's propaganda of the deed. So there's a big sort of, I guess, a schism between Emma Goldman and Alexander Berkman, because Emma Goldman is another anarchist, a popular anarchist in America. So he began the German language journal in London, aiming at expatriate Germans and Austrians. He brought the publication with him when he immigrated to the United States. Just a few years later, in 1882, Freiheit, Freedom, and Most were not shy about criticizing fellow anarchists, and work published in Freiheit often fomented controversies in anarchist circles. For instance, Most and Benjamin Tucker carried out a well-publicized disagreement in pages of the respective journals, and although Tucker championed Most's revolutionary philosophy later, the schism never healed. Some years later, Emma Goldman and Alexander Berkman became involved with the Freiheit group, only to leave after conflicts with Most arose when Berkman, inspired by Most's theory of attendance, was imprisoned for the attempted assassination of Henry Clay Frick, that frickin' bastard of the Homestead fucking strike, that fucking Pinkerton fucking hiring out psycho fucking, fucking snitch ass fucking fascist fucking Hitler at Rasco, fucking murdering, bloodthirsty, butchering piece of shit. Johann Most criticized Berkman's action because he missed, and actually he did give Henry Frick some sympathy. The public sympathized with Frick because Frick had almost been murdered, right? But Frick was responsible for a shit ton of murder. He was Carnegie's fucking flunky, and Carnegie goes to European vacation, puts Henry Clay Frick in charge, and then now you got all these dead working class people. So Berkman tried to kill him, but he missed, and he just had a different change of heart, and he couldn't do it. And so then he goes to prison forever. And Emma Goldman was infuriated, publicly took a horsewhip to Most at his lecture, demanding a proof or a retraction. Hit him with a horsewhip, right? So Emma Goldman did not like Johann Most. He went to jail one time for something he published. He also mentioned that the Alexander II, the Russian Tsar, should have been assassinated. He said that it's okay to slay a tyrant. Johann Most speaks these fanatical words: "After I read Marx's book in a Saxon prison, I took up the sword against human vampires." So capitalist, human vampires, right? That's what he's talking about. The Haymarket affair, that had to do with they blamed it on the German and Bohemian immigrants, which they weren't paying very much, so they organized. August spies: Albert R. Parsons, Carter Harrison, Samuel Fielden. So what does this have to do with the 1855 know-nothing riots in Louisville? Well, it's the German immigrants. Johann Most is a German immigrant who comes in later, not in the 50s. So I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but it connects to my ancestors, because I think that the immigration wave from Germany and Ireland into America is very significant for the 1800s. And even though it's a whole 14 years, a whole 14 years difference, I believe there's a continuity there. So I don't think it's that controversial. Frankly, I think it's actually pretty easy to prove. But if you're a fucking Nazi or a totalitarian fascist, you'll say history is the way I fucking say it, and if I say that shit don't matter. And I think it's the exact opposite. I think if the events don't matter to you, if it don't personally matter to you, then who gives a shit, you know? That's why Christopher Columbus is taught to be a hero, whereas if it was Native American schools, I feel like the original Americans, the Shawnees, when they teach history, they would say, oh yeah, and by the way, these white people came, right? So it would be more like they wouldn't just start, they identify, right? Columbus, white people identify with Columbus, and that's why the history starts with him. And then anything before him is actually called prehistory. So if you're a Shawnee, no, that isn't when history starts with Columbus. That is not. That's when you all start writing stuff down. But there have been, you know, people here for a long time. So the 1848 revolutions happened. It started in France and then went to Germany and went all over the place. France actually initiated like a third republic. Karl Marx writes Communist Manifesto in 48, then you have all these revolutions. After France has a revolution, it inspires revolutionary fervor all throughout Europe. 50 different countries, 1848 revolutions. In general, they lost, and for a lot of similar reasons, but there's, it's interesting how Europe looks at revolutions. You know, America, we only know ourselves and anything else, but really our revolution compared to other ones is shit. It's crap. It's got a lot, 7 years of bloodshed, but the premise is real simple, right? British are oppressors, so let's overthrow the British to be free. And but there's also the whole idea of Native Americans stealing Native American lands and slavery, right? So black people and Native Americans ain't down with it. So our revolution skips anybody, you know, that didn't own property, anybody who didn't own any land. If you weren't an aristocrat, a white male, rich white male, you know, a land-owning white man, then you didn't matter. You didn't even have a right to vote. So the Declaration of Rights of the German People, it was directed towards the Germans specifically. That's the difference between the French Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen and the declarations of the German people is directly to the German people. But it was given like universal rights, so they stole, you know, from those. The 1848 revolution, even though it failed, it was one of the reasons to keep Germany a country in 1990, because it was like, well, is there a continuity here, right? Do the German people, should there be a German country? Germany keeps on, every time you put it together, you know, it tries to take over the world. You know, should we keep on putting this thing together just so it can try to keep on taking over everybody? And the reason why there's unity is because there is a common culture. But anyways, the imperial law regarding the basic rights of the German people, it was published December 27th, 1848, declaring the basic rights as immediately applicable. So starting today, right? So nice Christmas gift for the 1848 revolutionaries. The catalog of basic rights include freedom of movement, equal treatment for all Germans in all of Germany, the abolishment of class-based privileges and medieval burdens, freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, the abolishment of capital punishment. So they eliminated the death penalty. They immediately, no more death penalty. Freedom of research and education, freedom of assembly, basic rights in regard to police activity and judicial proceedings, inviolability of the home, castle law, freedom of the press, independence of judges, freedom of trade, freedom of establishment. So abolition of the death penalty, freedom of teaching and science, freedom, fundamental rights, police treatments, court proceedings, inviolability of the home, freedom of the press, independence of the judiciary, as well as the commercial free trade. So that was the list of German rights. I'd actually like to read that document, to be honest with you. I know it would be written in German. And that concludes the 1855 Know Nothing Rights stuff that I typed up. But it doesn't end the German-American experience. And actually, I just cut it away at that. I got to come back to it. So, mental note, come back. So, 1848 revolutions. What had happened? So, you know, you had this revolution in France, right? Prussia experienced vexing problems common to all Germany. You have actually bread riots, catastrophic crop failures, so grim fairy tales that come from really heinous, horrible conditions, serious business recession, government incapable of dealing with them. In early 1847, King Frederick William IV responded to the growing crisis, summoned delegates from the 8 provincial diets to consider Prussia's ailing finances, but his refusal to make the United Diets, as the meeting was called, into a permanent representative institution, all offended its members and it accomplished nothing. Yeah, so the parliament, they started a Frankfurt parliament, right? So they had an elected assembly, and the prince, right? You have all these Bavaria. Eventually, their prince is like sent packing, but everybody started making demands, or sort of the liberals or the political staff. I don't know who the professors or the I don't know. Lots of people had demanded of the princes, the German princes, to start, you know, giving them things and constitutions and rights and stuff. And they started doing that. They started instituting reforms and changing the way that they ran business. The same thing happened in all, you know, really Germany proper. So they got this Frankfurt Parliament. They got together. They said, why do we have 39 German-speaking countries? We all need to get together. They didn't agree on the boundaries where Germany actually was supposed to be drawn. When it came to declaring the king, who is going to be the king of Prussia or the king of Austria. They asked the king of Prussia. The king of Prussia declines. When he declined, the whole fucking thing was shut down. It didn't even matter. Nothing mattered. So it all failed because he just said, you know, no, I'm not going to do it. And he didn't want to accept the authority from an elected assembly, you know. So there's an elected assembly. They asked him to be the fucking emperor, to be the king, and he said no. So what a dumb fuck, really, to be honest with you. Eventually we'll come back to this, like, you know, in the Weimar Republic, and then so 1900 or so. So they failed, right? He actually fired upon them, right? He had the fucking soldiers shoot on them. So the fucking king of Germany didn't give a shit about the fucking people whatsoever. First revolutionary mob came from Paris in February of 1848. Louis Blanc and other socialists overthrew King Louis Philippe and established the Second Republic. The revolutionary spark spread to Germany, leading to armed uprisings in Vienna, Austria, and Berlin. Germany students were particularly active in fighting in the Revolutionary Army against the Prussian forces of Kaiser Frederick Wilhelm IV. Liberals had long wanted a unified Germany instead of a fragmented and quasi-feudal Germany. To this end, the National Assembly, Frankfurt Parliament. The National Assembly is convened in Frankfurt on May 18, 1848. They sought to write a national constitution, create a centralized government, and then guarantee the freedom of press, trial by jury, and other basic rights by codifying the basic rights for the German people. National Assembly itself was not unified. Infighting as well as outside opposition eventually led to its downfall. Assembly cannot agree on the borders of the German nation-state, especially in terms of Austria and the Habsburg Empire. In terms of outside forces, Austrian Prince Felix Schwarzenberg proposed a centralized imperial constitution for the entire Austrian Empire and offered Prussian Kaiser Frederick Wilhelm IV the unifying crown. However, the Kaiser refused, spoke against any type of unification. In effect, the ideas in the National Assembly going nowhere. Several liberals left the Assembly. Assembly disbanded by military force. German Revolution of 1848 was over. Historians see the 48ers as the inheritors of the liberal tradition of Kant, Schiller, Washington, and Jefferson, Tolsman, German Corner. And while the ideas of the German Revolution were not successful in 1848, they provided a base for the Weimar Republic and for German unification in 1980. During January 1848, people in the island of Sicily off the coast of Italy rebelled against their king, Ferdinand II. At the same time, in areas of Italy ruled by Austria, anti-Austrian riots broke out in France. February overthrew King Louis Philippe and established a republic. News of the French uprising touched off revolts in Vienna, Budapest, and some of the German states in Austria. Emperor Ferdinand I was forced to accede to demands for the election of a National Assembly. In December, he abdicated in favor of his nephew, became Francis Joseph I. So they got fucking Austrian, you know, prince to step down. See to demands of election of a National Assembly. Hungary proclaimed its independence from Austria. So now you have Austria-Hungary. In Germany, the National Assembly met at Frankfurt to write a constitution for a unified Germany. Italy, King Charles V or Sardinia gave his people a liberal constitution and sent troops to help free Lombardy and Venice from Austrian rule. Demonstrators in England wanted change in voting laws, right? And then swinging in opposite directions soon followed. New French Republic quickly collapsed, its leaders divided, temporarily replaced by military dictatorship, and then fucking Napoleon. Fucking Napoleon. All the time with Napoleon.